Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today for my first drive in the new Audi RS e-tron GT. We're going to have a full look at this car, all of the ins and outs, a complete walk around and take it out for a drive on a lovely day here in England, out in the countryside, to see what Audi's saloon EV electric car is all about, especially from the perspective of an owner of a Taycan. Would I replace my Taycan Turbo S down the line with Audi's RS e-tron GT? Well, we'll go through it in detail. Like I said, a full look at all of the features, the stats, the technical details, the interior, the technology, and all of that. But I'd also like to say a thank you to the sponsor of today's video that we have right here, Juice Booster, the new Juice Booster 2, which is effectively the Swiss Army knife of EV chargers. And today we're going to head over to a venue to show you some things with this and a little bit of an experiment as well, so stay tuned for that. But this is the top spec flagship model of Audi's e-tron GT. It's an incredible looking car. There's a lot to see, a lot to run through, a lot to talk about, and a lot to think about as well with regards to could one of these join the garage in the future. So let's go then, a full look at the new Audi RS e-tron GT. First up then, let's have a full walk around of the car parked here under the trees before going out for a drive. This example is in Daytona Grey with the carbon Vorsprung package on Audi's new RS e-tron GT. Now the name itself wears the RS moniker, which is of course representing the sportiest models, the flagship models you could say that come from Audi Sport. e-tron is the name given to Audi's electric cars, a quickly growing lineup with the e-tron, e-tron Sportback, Q4 e-tron, and of course now this as well, the e-tron GT. The GT being the Grand Tourer, the luxury large saloon car, plenty of space for passengers and luggage in the back, but also a familiar silhouette if you're aware of the Taycan as well. This is the flagship model, so in this case, as I said, it's very highly spec'd with the carbon Vorsprung package, giving you carbon parts on the exterior and a lot of technology on the interior, but also in power terms, it has the 93.4 kilowatt hour battery, it makes 598 horsepower, in fact 646 horsepower with the boost, with 3 electric motors, all-wheel drive, and that means a 0 to 62 miles per hour or 100 kilometers per hour time of just 3.3 seconds or 3.6 without the boost, and onto a top speed of 155 miles an hour or 250 kilometers per hour, with numerous different driving modes and things that we can explore while we take it out on the roads. Now visually, like the concept of the e-tron GT, you have some aggressive lines. You've got quite a long bonnet, in fact, of course housing the motors for the front axle. Obviously around here you still have this hexagonal shape of the Audi grille, but used in a very different way, no longer for cooling of a motor that you find right behind. And down below you've got some of the sensors and detectors to help you with your adaptive cruise and leading on towards autonomous driving. Distinct Audi headlights that feature a nice display when you illuminate them. Around here, the air curtain finished with carbon fibre. The exposed carbon can be had either with the carbon black package or in this case the carbon Vorsprung. This is a very early UK right-hand drive production car, so a great opportunity to get out behind the wheel of it. I'm not the biggest fan of the wheels, I'm not going to lie, but of course these kind of designs are often done for their aero benefits, for cooling, but also aerodynamic efficiency. The final carbon Vorsprung package will also have red calipers hiding behind, but obviously you have a few settings for those in terms of the regeneration, which we'll talk about as well while we go out. You've got this 4-door configuration, or 5-door if you include the hatchback, with a carbon roof up top. Always looks absolutely stunning. To open up here though, inside a very Audi interior, but mixing design elements and a configuration as well like that of the Taycan. We will go through all of this in great detail. Before we come around towards the rear, you've got this very sharp shoulder line, which gives it a very sporty appearance and presence. Towards the tail light that wraps all the way around the back, the e-tron GT badging. Obviously the lip spoiler up top and the carbon diffuser. No exhaust tailpipes to be found, of course. Full electric car, which is still something I guess we're all getting a little bit more familiar with as time goes by. Charging ports up front as opposed to putting in a fuel pump, but we'll go through a little bit more about that later on. For the time being, let me come round. We'll just take a seat on board the RS e-tron GT. We've got carbon mirrors as well. Show you a little bit more inside here. This car has the extended leather package, a lot of nice options and upgrades. Still fairly new, not all that many miles on it. Let's press the button, wake it up. You can see the displays. This is the key for the car. RS key, RS badging that you find everywhere. Not the biggest fan of these RS logos, which are almost decals on the seats. You can have a login, continue as guest, confirm this. You've got some information about charging, all of your usual menus, drive select to go through the different options. You can pop it up, for example, through comfort, dynamic, or set it up in individual. Everything, I suppose, comes fairly naturally, being familiar with these cars myself, but let's go out for a drive to talk more about what this is like on the road. The initial sensation in here for me is one that is very familiar. This car drives remarkably similarly to the Taycan, but different. The steering is different, the pedal feel is different, the sound is different, and I want to explain more of that as well. But it's very Audi also in terms of the steering wheel, what you're holding, a similar steering wheel to that found in other Audi models with combustion engines. The similar interface in terms of the central console, but also the dashboard, obviously with the twist to position it more towards EV driving and showing you charge instead of remaining fuel. I've got more accustomed to driving an EV myself from the miles I've done in the Taycan, from getting through that barrier to entry of understanding the infrastructure and how to manage and how to live with it, which is why I'm going to talk more about the Juice Booster as well. But in terms of driving, it's a very welcoming car. Obviously, that near silence from being an electric vehicle, but also the instant torque and power when you get out onto an open road, put your foot down, and it just delivers. Now this is more akin to Taycan Turbo with just over 800 Newton meters of torque, then of course just over 600 horsepower, but also in terms of price, entry is at £110,000, 125 if you have the carbon black package, and then up to 135 if you have it effectively fully loaded like this with the carbon Vorsprung package with all of the exterior options and the interior upgrades as well. But driving along like this, obviously it's near silent and we're in comfort mode at the moment, but if I go to the drive select and press the button, we can go up into dynamic, where you start to get a little bit more sound of this UFO-like electrical whir inside, but everything sharpens up a little bit, becomes a little bit more lively. A small change in the ride, you notice it getting a little bit firmer, but of course the car is in many ways hiding its weight. We're talking a heavy car with all of this battery tech and the motors. It's 2,300 kilos, which is no lightweight by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're driving, you don't necessarily realize that it's quite that heavy. It's a big car, it's a long car, but it has rear wheel steering, so it still feels quite agile and nimble on its feet when you're on some twisty roads, parking, going around roundabouts, whatever it might be. But overall, it's when you put your foot down, you have that phenomenal delivery of speed that takes you just a moment to get used to, and this will never come across on a video. I know that it will never be possible to translate that sense of acceleration, a totally different feel to what you get from a more traditional combustion engine. Obviously it also has all the tech and assistance features that you'd want, with all of the detectors, the sensors, the lane assistance, the adaptive cruise control, the automatic braking, the automatic braking if required to avoid accidents, all of these kind of things. But as we come out of the roundabout here, I'm hoping I'll have an opportunity to put my foot down in dynamic mode. But here, steering is still light. You know, it's a saloon car, it's a daily car, we could say, a car for getting about in and managing, if you can, with the charging. Well, with the gap opening up, let me just put my foot down for a second. Instant power, instant go, and you arrive at the speed limit like that. It is so quick, as the Taycan as well. It just takes a moment to consider, and what you're looking at is actually a charge percentage gauge in the sense of, or power percentage gauge in the sense of how much you're using. So 100% of power, as opposed to, of course, the more traditional red line that you'd have with a combustion engine. And the more time I'm spending with EVs, the more I'm understanding and working out how this fits into routines, into lifestyles. I don't think it's 100% of everything should be an EV, but I do think that there are massive benefits of these. The fun of where I'm driving at the moment is that we have plenty of roundabouts, so a lot of opportunities to accelerate on dual carriageways. Now, one thing I was initially wondering about, you might be wondering as well, is why does the steering wheel have shift paddles on the back? Well, what they actually do, if you go down with the left or up with the right, is increase or decrease the amount of regenerative braking that you get. So pressing down gives you a little bit more, pressing up takes it up, back towards effectively giving you none. So when you're fully on the upside, when you lift off, it will roll forwards, it will carry the momentum, it won't brake and charge up the battery. If you turn it all the way down, you then get significantly more effectively one pedal driving, where you can lift off the throttle and the car will brake itself. Not as much as some cars which literally offer the one pedal braking, but enough that you're getting that conservation of power, or charge I should say, when you're back on the brakes. And obviously this car features the latest high-tech charging infrastructure, so capable of charging very, very quickly, just over 20 minutes or so to get the majority of your battery charged up at an appropriate fast charger. And then you get back on the power and it just delivers in droves. It's such a difficult sensation to explain through a video, but I can tell you there aren't many combustion engine cars I would want to have accelerated that hard, but you don't see it on the video because it's so smooth, and obviously the suspension keeps the car very level in the process. Now, I want to touch on some of the differences between this and the Taycan, but I think we'll get to that a little bit later. It's time to talk charging and give you a demo of the juice booster. Now, it's a glorious day today. We've actually pulled over to visit a friend at his warehouse who's kindly allowing me to demo this to you and to plug the car in for a moment. But I think this is one of the biggest barriers to entry of EVs, is understanding how to live with a car that you have to charge. If you drive in a combustion engine car, we're all familiar with the process of going to a fuel or a gas station, spending 5 minutes standing at the pump, 10 minutes in total, you've got a full tank and off you go again. And of course you can take a car like this with its very fast charging infrastructure to one of the fast chargers where you could park up for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour maybe, and get the car back up to full. But if those are inconvenient and significantly off your route, obviously that's not what you want to do. You don't necessarily want to wait around. But the thing with an EV is that you could charge it to full at home overnight, at work during the day, or you could use the juice booster to completely save you if you find yourself stranded and all you have access to is a normal charging point. So with this car, there are 2 ports for charging. Unlike the Taycan, it doesn't have a swipe mechanism like my Taycan Turbo S does. It's more like a normal fuel filler cap that you open it up. Inside, you've got the normal charging point. On this side, you also have the CCS, which is for your high speed. On the other side, you just have the normal point. But of course, you can use what I'm about to show you to plug that in pretty much anywhere. And then in the back here, we have what Juice Booster call the Master Traveller Set, which is effectively this pack, which is velcroed to the boot floor. You can take it out, you can leave it at home, but it won't be sliding around. And inside, it contains the Juice Booster 2, which I'll take out, along with all of the different leads that you could possibly imagine. All of the different countries for travelling, all of the different home connectors. We've got an extension lead, we've got locks, the manuals, cords, we've got all sorts of different things. But fundamentally, check this out, this is the Juice Booster 2. It is so strong, you could actually drive over it. So let's say this was going across the floor in a car park, it can take up to 3 tons without it being a problem. It also has IP67 water resistance, so if it starts to rain, also not a problem. The same goes for the various connectors. So to do this, we need the UK 3-pin. We also need the extension here. I'm going to take this round and set it up and see how it goes. Before we're charging, let me show you where we are at in terms of the car's charge at the moment. We will continue as a guest. We will turn on the car very quickly. We've got a few messages. Charging and efficiency. We go into charging. I have taken it down from about 95% to 79%. Right, let's go plug it in. With all of the parts out, let me show you quite how simple this is. We're plugging into a normal 3-pin UK main socket indoors. You've got the rubbers over the connectors here at the moment. We're going to use the extension so that we can run it outside, but these literally line up the orange dots, plug them together. Also water resistant, impact protection as well. Nice and easy does it. That's the whole process. I'm going to show you literally how simple this is. To plug it all in, to get it set up, and to turn it all on, because I think this is where we go back to that barrier to entry. If this is complicated, that's where you really start to run into trouble with it. But basically, we plug this in, turn it on there, pull out the extension cord towards the Juice Booster 2, which we have just outside, take off these rubbers as well, connect this together like that. Then this should now show us that it's on indeed, set at the moment for UK 10 amps. We've got the light, it's waiting to be plugged in. Leave that on the floor, wherever it might be in the car park. Come to our connector here. Again, take that off. Nice long cord, which means it doesn't bang onto the car itself. Plug it in. Wait for a moment. It should connect in just a second. There we go, heard it. Another white light comes on, and it's that simple. Have a look down here. You can see that this is charging away. We can leave it for a while, it will do the job. And you can also get one of these, by the way, with 5% off. The link is down below, over to Juice Booster to get a discount on one of the different sets involving these, but that's how easy it is to now charge up. While this is busy doing its thing, imagine the Juice Booster was, let's say, over here in the space adjacent to where you're parked and somebody drove over it. It would not be a problem. You can literally stand on that, total non-issue. It can support 3 tons, so that is charging up at the moment. Back here in the Master Traveller set, this is your ideal set of connectors. Let's say you're going on a road trip across Europe. You've got all the connectors for France or Germany, for Switzerland, for Italy. You've got 3-phase plugs depending where you're going or what you might need, all as part of this kit. You've got the locks as well for securing the charger, all as part of that one single set that you can carry with you efficiently, easily, and charging the car up brilliantly. We've been charging up for a while, and this also, by the way, has automatic current regulation. It has thermal management to make sure it doesn't get too hot, but we've now gained a couple of percent. It'll be time to get this packed away again. Press the button, it will release. It's that simple, and onwards we can go. It's amazing how that just isn't a complicated process. I mean, we all manage to charge our mobile phones, I think, pretty much every single night of the year, don't we? When you get used to this and you've done it a couple of times, you can pack that back away properly. It's that simple. Car has some charge. When you've got home from a day out, from a drive, plug it in, pop it away back in the car if you're going on an adventure. Job done. And as I said, 5% off as well if you use the link down below. For now, let's hop back in the RS e-tron GT, continue the drive, and talk about how this stacks up with the Taycan. When it comes then to getting on the power, that's where I can never give you the sensation of an EV, that instant power and torque. And in fact, talking similarities and differences versus the Taycan, and of course I'm driving the Taycan Turbo S, which isn't the fair, I suppose, comparator to this, but what's so fascinating is that in this car you have 646 horsepower. The Taycan Turbo S has 760, so 100 horsepower difference, but this feels the same kind of speed, the same kind of instant propulsion, that shove in the back, that difficulty to lean forwards when you're on the throttle. Straight away, off you go. You just don't get that sense, I think, through the videos at all. But there are some differences in the way it feels. Pretty much everything to do with the driving and your interaction. From the steering feel, to the feel of the throttle pedal and the brake pedal just being that touch softer, to even the sound that it makes when you've got the sound noise on, and you can change it, you can completely turn it off or have it in a middle setting. In here it's quieter than in the Taycan, and it's its own distinct sound. It doesn't use the exact same noise that I'm familiar with from the Taycan, so you still get this feeling of the acceleration through the noise. The equivalent of a combustion engine is something accelerated quite aggressively there. You do have the 2-speed gearbox like in the Taycan, which means that you get this very quick acceleration off the line as it uses the first gear effectively to pull you away before going into the second gear and bang, you're back at the speed limit again. It's quite hard to put that into perspective. Getting up to 70 miles an hour in here happens so very, very quickly. It's quite hard to really understand and interpret that. But it's overall a different car. Yes, there are very, very similar characteristics, but you feel like you're in an Audi, not in a Porsche, and that's what I find quite fascinating on a personal level, that these two brands obviously share many things between them as other cars or models as part of the whole Volkswagen group, but then they manage to make their own characteristics, their own traits. I would like it to actually regen more by default. I keep finding myself, when I've changed the modes, wanting to put that back into the, well, pulling the down paddle. That seems unnatural to say, a little bit more. Every time though, back on the acceleration, it's silly fast. 30 to 70 miles an hour is just silly, silly, silly fast. There's no world that anybody ever needs a car that accelerates this quickly. And in here, in the RS e-tron GT, you have a claimed 280 miles of range versus 295 miles in the normal e-tron GT, the non-RS model, which is of course slightly less power output and a little bit more focused on the range side of things, which is substantially more than I can tell you I managed to get out of any runs I've been doing in the Taycan. Of course, if you're accelerating foot flat from roundabout to roundabout like one can do here in Milton Keynes, you're not going to be seeing that kind of range out of it whatsoever. But it's just immensely addictive to feel that huge level of acceleration, that huge shove that the car offers you. And with the rear wheel steering going around a tight roundabout, it feels so light and nimble, deceptively so, because like I said earlier, you know that it isn't. It is not a light car. And again, to step on it and the numbers build in a way that just doesn't really make sense. A family saloon car shouldn't do that, doesn't need to do that, will never need to do that. It's just very, very, very all-round entertaining. This is the crazy thing then, with absolutely nobody behind me, come to a stop, foot on the brake, on the throttle, and go. Oh wow! It makes you feel a little bit dizzy as it pulls you back into the seat. The feeling of a launch, a full acceleration in an EV is unlike anything else, and of course outside it is silent. Outside you are not roaring away and disturbing everybody around you. These things certainly have their place. You know, I'm a petrol head at heart. I love my cars with big combustion engines, but there's something very, very fun about this. And like I say, the more time I've spent around EVs, the more I've got accustomed to the charging procedures and understanding what to do, where to go, and I suppose crucially where not to go, the more it just works. It just makes sense. It's just brilliant in so many ways. Back at base, but before I hand back the keys to the RS e-tron GT, there are a few more things I would like to show you, including going through the interior of this in a little bit more detail. So let's come and check this out and go through how some of the functionality and technology side of all of this works. So I'm just going to start it quickly. When you put your foot on the brake, press the button in the center, you get a needle sweep across the dial, and of course, as we saw earlier, we get the login screen here depending exactly how you want to set it up. We're going to be a guest today, just confirm that message. Inside here, like other Audi models, there are so many screens, displays, settings, tiles. If you go back here, how you can set it all up, all of the different menus, a lot to go through. If we go into car, for example, this is where you've got the charging menu at the moment, or go back to the main car menu and you've got everything else that you could want to set and configure, including Audi Drive Select, where you can set up the driving powertrain and set up the drive system, the suspension, and the sound profile, as I mentioned, subdued, balanced and dynamic, depending exactly how you'd like all of that to sound. Beneath, you've got a separate climate control panel, no touch panel here as found on the Q8 or the A8, for example, the A6, that kind of thing. You do have the haptic feedback, as you can hear. And then down in this central console, you've got your drive, neutral, or if we go into reverse, with your 360 cameras and a 3D view as well, which is always very, very cool to be able to see. Obviously, giving a blank space where the door is open at the moment. Press there to put the park brake on, and to pop it into park, your park assist button as well. This is kind of funky, reminds me of old iPods. This is your volume control. You rotate on there, you've got mute, one press at the bottom, next track, last track, on, off, but it's a sensor as you slide your finger around. You've got your cup holders, charging ports, a very small little center console here, very, very, very small area to be able to squeeze bits and pieces. And then when it comes to the dashboard, you can change the view, you can have the full screen, you can slide it across, go full screen navigation map, for example, gives us the alert that the door is open. We just close that, everything wakes up a little bit and changes modes, and when you pop it into dynamic, you'll see here it will go into dynamic mode. When you go into drive, it wakes up and makes the sound as you can hear it starting or back off. Obviously here you can configure all of this and change your different screens and see the various displays or whatever it is exactly that you would like to see out of it all. So it all works very well, easily. It's self-explanatory. You've got the satin carbon fibre finish for the trim across the dash, continuing slightly wrapping around there towards the doors. I like the door handles that are floating with the electric release as you pull them. You can hear it kind of releasing locks and latches. On the door is where you've got your window controls, your mirror controls, your memory seat controls, and the button as well for the boot. And we've got the Bang & Olufsen trim in here. So just to turn this off, press and hold the button, my seat slides back slightly, which is relevant to what I want to talk about next, which is the rear. The proportions of this are slightly different to the Taycan. It has a longer bonnet, which I think means the doors are pushed ever so slightly back. If we come towards the rear though, and open this up, like I said, that seat has slid back from its normal position, but this is awkward. So in its normal position, you do have enough space, but I'm not particularly tall and it's very tight like this. So you do want that tucked back to its regular front position. Back here, we've got the center console, armrest, cup holder, but not a whole lot else really to talk about. Just enough headroom. If you were 6 foot, you would be on the roof here. I'm 5'10" and a half, and it's not a lot. I'm very close, move slightly to the right, and my head is on the roof. So this sloping roof line, which is sporty, looks cool, it's efficient, does take away some headroom in the back, so that is definitely something to be slightly aware of about the space here. And then as I step out, there's also this that you have to step around on the rear arch, given the position of the wheel back there. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of that wheel design, I'm sorry to say. I prefer a more traditional, nice multi-spoke wheel, but overall I think the design is cool. I'm not, however, the biggest fan of this, the new green stripe that's been introduced at the left-hand side of the number plate. I think the first car I've driven actually that has one, but this is an optional thing that allows you to show that you've got an EV. Perhaps in the future it will become compulsory to help cameras, for example, recognizing if you're driving in areas or down roads that are for EVs only or something like that. We'll have to wait and see, but it just knocks everything out of alignment a bit. And I don't think you need to show necessarily that you've got an EV. The car does the talking after all. Now, Daytona grey wouldn't be my first choice of colour. I generally prefer something that's a little bit brighter and more stand out, but I guess for the type of car that this is, it's a bit more subtle, and I really like this rear view, the way it wraps around some of the sharper lines, these tail lights and the design that they carry as well, the sloping roofline down towards the back, and of course wearing the RS badge as well. But a fun outing to take this for a first drive, to go out and try out the juice booster, which, like I say, you could drive over that thing while it's charging and it will still continue to charge, so that will certainly play a part in an upcoming European road trip for me out on the road. So do check those out, and don't forget, of course, as well, you can get 5% off with the link in the description down below also. But today, first drive in the new Audi RS e-tron GT, and what a lovely day, what a lovely drive, and a great opportunity to experience it. So would I replace my Taycan with an RS e-tron GT? In truth, they are very similar cars. It would be quite a sideways type move. I think this is a brilliant thing overall. I enjoy the Taycan, and I think this is brilliant for very many of the same reasons. That step forwards, but still feeling like the kind of cars we enjoy driving, not like something that's trying to be totally different. It drives as you would hope an Audi or a Porsche would drive. It drives as a proper car, and it is very, very fast. For today though, that is all. Thank you very much for watching as always, guys. Do check out Juice Booster 2 to find more details about that as well, link down below. But for now, that is all, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.